Welcome to Across the Balkans. Great to have you with us on the show. I'm Ludovica Brignola. Croatia's property prices keep skyrocketing as the country records the highest annual increase across the European Union. House prices in the country have been rising steadily over the years, but the latest report by Eurostat shows they've had the highest growth across the entire EU in the first quarter of 2023. The agency also says they surged 5 times above the EU rates in the final quarter of last year. While many blame inflation for the record numbers, some say it also has to do with Croatia joining Schengen and the Eurozone. Veljko Skenderija went to Zagreb to find out the answer.
Buildings are rising all over Zagreb, but the current construction activity resulting in roughly 3,000 apartments per year does not even come close to meeting the demand. The result? Property prices, not only in Zagreb but also in Croatia in general, have recorded the highest growth rates per square meter in the EU.
Činjenica je da smo mi prošle godine imali stvarno rekordan broj transakcija, da smo imali rekordan rast cijena kao posljedica prije svega inflacije, a onda ulaska u Schengen, odnosno u Eurozonu, i to je sve zajedno rezultiralo time da je čak 37% kupoprodaja su napravili strani državljani i da su stvarno cijene narasle.
It sounds much more dramatic in numbers. The price per square meter in Croatia grew by more than 17% in the last quarter of 2022 alone, which was almost 5 times higher than the EU average. A new building in a good location is almost as expensive as Vienna, Berlin or Rome.
Dobar dan, zovem u vezi stanova sa vašom novogradnjom u Petrinskoj ulici u centru Zagreba. Svi su prodani?
Ima još dostupnih stanova 102 cirka i 122 kvadrata.
Ok, hvala vam. Mogu li vas samo pitati koliko vam je bila cijena kvadrata zadnjih stanova koji su se prodavali?
7.990 € nam je neto kvadrat.
Hvala, puno odženja.
Vujović separates customers into 2 categories. One of them is precisely those who to a large extent are responsible for the increase in prices. Buyers with deeper pockets who decided to invest in real estate because of the historically low interest rates on bank savings.
To im je bila bolja zaštita za njihov novac nego da im stoji na računu u banci. S druge strane imamo prosječnog Hrvata koji radi za neku plaću od 1000 €, odnosno par za 2000 €, i takvim ljudima je u stvari u ovim tržišnim okolnostima jako teško kupiti nekretninu za stanovanje.
This is Philip. He had a child and wanted to move his family away from renting to ownership. And although he submitted down payment for the construction of this building, it did not prevent the developer from taking advantage of the market situation and rising the agreed price.
Jednostavno on je rekao, hoćeš kupiti stan ili nećeš. Kako su se cijene digle, ja nisam mogao drugačije nego reći da. Jer i da sam odustao, čak i da sam dobio tu duplu kaporu natrag, ja s tim novcem nažalost ne mogu puno napraviti. I onda dalje cijena se toliko digla u razliku tih godinu i pol, 2 da sam morao prihvatiti podizanje cijene.
Figures show that in 2022, home prices in Croatia grew 20% per square meter compared to the previous year. In Zagreb, it was whopping 32%. Looking at the last few years, the situation looks even more pessimistic. In 2022, real estate prices in Croatia were 62% higher than 2015, while 82% higher in Zagreb.
Morao sam otići van, ajmo reći, centra, ne mogu odabrati Maksim ili tako slične kvarte gdje cijena je bila preko 3-4 tisuće € po kvadratu kako koja zgrada, i da dođem ovdje i kupim si jeftinije. To je da si mogu zapravo kreditno to isplatiti.
Dragan Martinović is developer too. He has put about 100 apartments on the market in the last 3 years. But unlike many others, he says he does not raise prices and tries to remain realistic to not take advantage of the market situation.
Ovo je prodano, to smo u gradnji prodali i to je recimo u zadnje 3 godine, ja sam u ovom biznisu 26 godina, nikad nije bilo ovak da je toliki da tak velim stampedo ili potražnja za kvadratima, za novim stanovima.
Martinović believes that this market is by no means healthy and that it is reminiscent of the real estate bubble that burst in 2008 and 2009, after which the industry needed 6 to 7 years to recover.
Mislim da to nije dobro, ali teško je to regulirati. To se ne može regulirati nikakvim mehanizmom osim samo od sebe da tržište to napravi ili da odradi svoje.
And the market is indeed showing some signs of calming down. In most of the European Union, real estate prices are falling due to pressure from rising interest rates. And while this isn't quite the case yet in Croatia, where interest rates are at just 4%, there is a noticeable drop in transactions.
Future buyers could be in for some good news, as real estate analysts agree that the price correction is long overdue. It won't be like the one in 2008 during the global financial crisis, but it will bring prices down. There is unwritten rule among some economists that real estate cycles last 8 years, so it could happen anytime now.
The falling prices could also trigger a real estate tax, an unpopular measure that no government has yet had the courage to implement, despite it being suggested by the IMF and European Commission. But now, opinions have changed.
Mislim da će prva sljedeća vlada koja dođe to morati napraviti, uvesti porez nekretnine, međutim ono što je loše, što smo već propustili oporezovati špekulaciju nekretnina u Hrvatskoj koja je dovela do enormnog rasta cijena nekretnina i tu smo taj kolač prepustili uzeti, a još uvijek zadržavamo vrlo niske dohotke građana.
Lalovac believes that the tax is necessary because it would shift taxation from labor to capital and also reduce real estate speculation. Last year, up to 70% of apartments were bought with cash, and some say this may indicate possible money laundering. When Croatia switched from the kuna to euro in 2023, anyone who deposited more than 10,000 euros in the bank had to explain where they acquired that money. But if they bought real estate, that was not the case. Meanwhile, the circumstances across the border aren't all that rosy either.
The real estate situation in Serbia and Montenegro is quite similar to the one in Croatia. Russian and Ukrainian citizens moving to Serbia raise prices, and in Montenegro, where until a year ago there was a golden passport scheme, demand has fallen, but prices are still stubborn high.
Marija Božić-Milosavić runs a real estate agency in Montenegro and says neither sellers nor buyers are satisfied. And while prices per square meter in the capital Podgorica approach 2,000 euros, the coast is dominated by luxury real estate designed for immigrants with so-called golden passports.
Na Primorju se sada traže luksuzne nekretnine koje će opravdati negde te cene. Tako da recimo u Perastu, u gradu u kome je dosta toga pod zaštitom UNESCO, recimo imamo kvadrat između 4 i 6 hiljada evra.
Marija also has experience working in the Serbian market. She says the average prices in Belgrade are similar to Podgorica, except that Serbia has recorded a huge jump in the volume of sales. Last year, it amounted to around 7.5 billion euros.
Apsolutni rekorder definitivno koji doprinosi toj statistici jeste Beograd na vodi, jer su uspeli da postignu cenu po kvadratu od oko 10.500 eura.
In a region where owning a home has been ingrained across generations, high real estate prices have another negative effect, forcing young people to move abroad. The key may be state policies that will devise a solution to the housing issue. But for now, there are none. Veljko Skenderija, TRT World, Zagreb, Croatia.
Let's bring in Professor Dr. Vizar Hoxha, who joins us now from Pristina. He's a Dean of Real Estate School at the University for Business and Technology in Kosovo. Thank you very much for joining us today. Right, so we've seen real estate prices, especially in Croatia, really rising exponentially between 2021 and 2022, and they continue to do so, some 14.8% increase versus a European average of 7.7%. What's happening?
That's an insightful question, and the 14.8% increase in real estate prices compared to the 7.7%, which is the EU average, is indeed a complex issue with multiple contributing factors. One of them is supply and demand. There is a limited housing supply and increased demand in Croatia and in other Balkan countries, driven by rapid urbanization, economic growth, foreign investment in these countries, infrastructure investments, tourism investment in countries such as Croatia, Montenegro and Albania, which have all pushed prices up. Then economic recovery from the pandemic is capitalized into the prices of real estate. The post-pandemic economic recovery and low interest rates have also fueled buying activity and further driving the demand. Then there is the rising cost of production. This is a critical factor that cannot be overlooked. The war in Ukraine has triggered a rise in the cost of fuel, steel and other commodities essential for building materials. This has directly impacted the cost of production of real estate, contributing to the price increase throughout European Union globally, but also not overlooking Croatia and other Balkan countries.
Right, it's interesting, Professor, that you also mentioned tourism and foreign investments playing a role. Croatia also, we know, joined the EU in 2013, became the bloc's 28th member, but also at the start of this year, it introduced the euro. Some say this is playing a role with this inflation and rising property prices. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree, of course. Croatia's accession to the EU opened up new opportunities for investment, trade, economic growth. Then the integration into the single market allowed for increased capital inflows, including foreign direct investments directly in the real estate sector. This likely contributed to upward pressure on property prices, particularly in prime locations and tourist destinations in Croatia. Then the recent adoption of the euro also has identified this trend. How? Through the increased investment appeal. The adoption of the euro enhances investor confidence by reducing the currency risk and transaction costs. This attracts both domestic and foreign investors to the real estate market, driving up both the demand and also the prices. Then access to cheaper credit. Joining the Eurozone often leads to lower interest rates, less currency risk, making the borrowing cheaper. This fuels the demand for real estate, both from individual home buyers, but also from property developers, leading to price increases. Then there's also the tourism impact. Croatia's tourism industry is a significant part of its economy, and the adoption of the euro have made travel more convenient for tourists from other Eurozone countries, potentially boosting demand for short-term rentals, vacation properties, or secondary homes, further driving up the prices.
Travel, you say, became more convenient for many people who live in the European Union, and tourism plays a key role in Croatia's economy as a whole. I wonder how big a role, given that the cities that saw a real boom in property prices were the capital Zagreb, but also Dubrovnik, known for its medieval walls, and obviously the cities on the Adriatic coast as well. Is this a blessing for the country's GDP or a curse, considering the inflation it brings about?
Tourism indeed plays a vital role in Croatia's economy, contributing significantly to the country's GDP, gross domestic product. The allure of cities like Zagreb, known for its vibrant urban life, but also Dubrovnik, famous for its medieval walls and stunning Adriatic coast, has attracted tourists from around the world. Of course, this has a twofold impact on the real estate market, as you rightly pointed. It's a blessing for GDP. Why? Because the tourism boom has led to increased demand for accommodations, restaurants, and other tourism-related services. This has spurred investment in real estate, both in commercial and residential sectors, contributing positively to economic growth and employment. The coastal cities in particular have seen a surge in property development, catering to both tourists and investors seeking vacation homes, but also as you mentioned, it's a potential curse for real estate inflation. On the flip side, the increased demand has led to skyrocketing real estate prices, especially in these tourist hotspots, such as Dubrovnik, as you mentioned. While this has benefited property owners and developers, it has also made housing less affordable for local residents, especially for affordability issues. So the inflation in real estate prices may also pose risk of a bubble if not managed carefully. Comparatively, even other coastal areas in Montenegro and Albania have also seen rising real estate prices, driven in part by their growing tourism industries. Montenegro's picturesque coastline has attracted foreign investment, while Albania's relatively lower property prices have also made it emerging destination for tourists and investors alike. So
interesting, Professor. But because on this very point, I was going to ask, what's happening in the Balkans more broadly? Is there a trend there, or is it just specific to Croatia? We're also seeing price rises in other real estate markets. For instance, how is the situation in Kosovo right now?
The real estate market in the Balkans shows a prevalent trend of overvaluation, particularly in city centers. All the development revolves around the capital cities. Cities like Pristina, which is capital of Kosovo, but also other cities such as Skopje, the capital of Macedonia, then Belgrade and Zagreb, are marked by high price to rent ratios, which is the measure through which the valuation is measured for all the urban economies. And these price to rent ratios are above 20 and the signaling overvaluation. This could indicate the prices are rising and may not be supported by underlying rental incomes, posing a potential risk for both investors and home buyers. On the other hand, cities like Podgorica and Tirana are more fairly valued, reflecting a balance between price and value. So Tirana shows a mixed assessment with overvaluation in the city center and fair valuation outside. I have done also a comparative study with Istanbul and Ankara, and comparing all these cities in the Balkans with Ankara and Istanbul as a metropolitan of the world. So these cities in the Balkans are, more overvalued than Istanbul and Ankara. This is showing the huge trend of overvaluation due to different factors that play a role.
Absolutely. And quickly, just because we're running out of time, Professor, just quickly, one last point. You mentioned low interest rates being part of the picture, and you also talked about state subsidies in the housing sector. And I wonder, how can the government start tackling this issue in Croatia and in the rest of the Balkans as well?
So how can it can through increasing housing supply, by incentivizing the construction on affordable housing and easing zoning restrictions, through regulatory oversight, implementing stricter regulations on informal buying from informal economy, especially lots of demand comes from informal economy, revisiting subsidy schemes, interest rate policies for those countries that have their own currency, such as Albania, then Serbia, Macedonia. But there's not much to be done in terms of interest rate policies from Croatia, because this is regulated in EU level. Then tourism management in tourist hotspots like Dubrovnik, managing the impact of tourism and real estate may involve regulation on short-term rentals and investment in community housing projects. Then regional collaboration, learning from each other. Balkan cities can collaborate on best practices and provide valuable insights how to deal and tackle the tourism growth and strike a balance between the sustainable real estate development and the prices.
Right, and unfortunately we ran out of time, but Dr. Visar Hoxha, thank you very much for being with us today and for your insightful analysis.